The day you agree to be the biggest version of yourself is the humblest day of your life. It is the first day that you agree to truly be responsible for creating the remarkable life you are, and you are now in service of the universe. Hi, everybody. This is Judy Wilkins-Smith, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Judy, thank you so much for taking the time. This is going to be fantastic.
I am so pleased to be here. I don't know which part of the world you're from, but I'm from Texas, and it is hot.
Your new book, Decoding Your Emotional Blueprint. It sounds so intriguing. Is that like very similar to the Human Genome Project? I mean, you're decoding emotional blueprints. I mean, I've never heard of that. So can you explain a little bit of that?
Sure. So you don't just inherit your physical DNA, you also inherit your emotional DNA, your patterns of thoughts, feelings, actions, reactions. Often if you say, I'm depressed or I've been sad all my life, it may not belong to you. It may have echoed all the way down through 4 generations, and now it's sitting with you, and it has a purpose. It comes to you because it's looking for the change agent. There are often patterns trying to stop and patterns trying to start. Or if it's a really strong one that you've inherited, it may be that it's asking you to take it to the next level. And there are epigenetic studies that now show that a significant event creates an imprint on the system that then creates a blueprint for generations of behavior.
When do we recognize this?
Often we don't, but I'll tell you how to recognize it. It's when you're really frustrated, mad, annoyed, you feel like you're in a box that's too small for you. You know that there's more to you than this little piece, and you know there's more to life than this little world. What you're tapping into is, yeah, you've got all of the multi-generational stuff. Right now, you're busy reliving ancient history. You're not living your life. Your life comes when you look at what you've got and you look at the pattern that only you can generate and the piece that only you can write. And when you feel that tug in your heart and that kind of little grin that says, this could be exciting, that's you heading into that direction and writing the next chapter.
How did you find this work? Like, how did this pathway unfold for you?
It's a very strange thing. I guess, you know, when something like this happens, you kind of, I suppose, know it was meant to happen. So my father was killed, and it was either write books or go crazy. And I figured that write books was probably a better option. And I was doing research for one of them and stumbled into somebody who was doing this work. And they said, come study the work with me and I'll help you with a book. Went and studied with them, got 0 help with a book, but then kept going with it, and organizations began to ask me to come and work with them, and top executives. So I'm really lucky I've done that around the world. But what was interesting was about 5 years in, somebody said to me, well, of course you could do the work. And I went, why? And they said, well, you come from South Africa. That's where it started. And I hadn't known. And it also is based in part on the Zulu tribe and their community connections, which was even stranger because when I left the teaching hospital where I worked, the person who gave my farewell speech said, we know you're leaving us, but you will find a way to represent us in the world. And he was a Zulu gentleman.
So what technique did they teach you?
This work, the technique is really learning to understand how systems speak. What are they saying? What are they doing? Why is it that you now are the person sitting with this burden or this issue or this big desire? It's because systems are dynamic living entities. Their basic need is to survive. Their highest ideal is to thrive, and it keeps looking for you. Because if there's an incompletion, the system is asking you to bring that to balance. And if there is something that's really bubbling, it's saying, you're the change agent. Do this. So that's what happens with that. And the technique then that I was taught was observe the system and then start putting it into 3D, into what Bert Hellinger called a constellation, which is a really bad word to use in English because everybody says, oh, you're an astrologer, right? And I go, yeah, no, I'm not. A constellation in this sense is a grouping of elements within a home system. So all of the members of the family system, and in an organization, it could be customers, it could be purpose, it could be vision and mission, it could be the associates, all of the components of that system. Or in religion, what are your tenets of this religion? So we're part of many systems all of our lives, and we adapt very quickly like chameleons from one to the other.
Mm. Hmm. I was looking at your Instagram reel, and there was a video of, I think it was a previous interview that you've done on someone's show, and I had to share it on mine, where you said that we are these larger beings that are essentially trying to fit into a smaller box, right?
Right.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I always tell people you're a remarkable being if only you know how to see it. So we're taught from very small, be humble, be small, don't ask too much, don't be greedy. Don't think about money, be careful of relationships. So we get all of this, be careful, be careful, be careful, be careful, which makes us think that the only way that we can belong is to fit into the small box of obey the shoulds and obey the musts. It's when we begin to look at them and go, is that really true? That things start to change. Because then we realize, wait a minute, I've been told that, and my mom was told that, and her mom was told that, but why? And usually it's because there was a precipitating event. When you have that significant event, it tells you, react. And now you don't know, is my heart going to open or close? Is my gut going to squeeze tight? Or is my brain going to go into reactive or creative? Well, most of us go into reactive, heart closed, being small, because then I'm safe. But when we start to step outside of what safe is, it's not ever that we leave the system or leave the family. You can't. What you do is you expand the system and you begin to realize that we've been listening to a bit of a joke for a long time. We're not small. We are very big beings. And by the way, we are master magicians.
Oh, hit on that. Please unpack that.
Sure. So the master magician part is this. I've been watching and working with people for a long time, and I realized that what our brain tells our body, that our body believes, then becomes the truth. Only it's not the truth, it's your truth. And you can change that anytime you want to. So when you start to tell yourself, I ask people all the time, do you watch horror movies? And they go, no, no, no. And I go, yeah, but you tell yourself horror stories about yourself all day long and you believe them. When you start to tell yourself a very different story and you believe it and you get it, everything changes. The truth changes.
Now, does the environment change? Or are we talking about healing?
Everything changes because the minute you change the way you relate to anything, everything has to reorientate. In terms of healing, what I have seen are that people will come in with one very clear set of beliefs about themselves and their bodies and go out with a very different set of beliefs and come back and say to me, how'd that disappear? You rewired your brain. When you rewired your brain, you rewired your body.
I've heard a lot of this work done in the subconscious work, like the shadow work, hypnotherapy,
Sure.
reprogramming the mind. Does that technique, do you orchestrate that technique in your modality, or is it?
Probably orchestrate exactly the opposite. I literally make the unconscious conscious and the invisible visible, because by people being able to see their whole system in 3D, for the first time, instead of it operating below the level, they're going, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. I could see that. I understand. wait a minute, this was never about me. Mom didn't not see me. She was engaged over there. Whoa. And suddenly you see people rewiring completely because those insights and assumptions they'd made, not so true.
So you're like, in that example, the mother is just acting on a set of conditioned programming, right? To a
Passed
certain
down from her parents and her parents and her parents. And if she was an adoptee, a little bit like physical DNA, it doesn't care if you know your parents or not. It's still going to show up for you. So yes, we are mostly, as I said before, you are relitigating or reliving history. You're simply repeating the pattern and thinking that you have free will. Not so fast. Not until you see what's in your system.
So I could possibly be reacting to a 150-year-old system.
Absolutely. But here's the kicker. In the space of a couple of hours or in the space of a couple of months or however long it takes you, you can actually change that 150-year-old system. In other words, you're a quantum leaper if you choose.
Quantum leaper. Ooh, what does that feel like though? Like when you get out of the system, when you get out of the matrix, what does that feel like?
I'll tell you what it feels like to stand in the knowing field. So the knowing field is what we refer to that field as. It's the repository of all that has ever been, not been, said, not said, the actions and inactions. And I can tell you that people are completely confounded when they stand in as a representative for the first time. Because what we don't realize is that we are very well able to key into other people's systems, very well able. And people say, how? If you watch somebody on a program, The Voice or one of those, and you see them get it, you feel yourself start to kind of vibrate at that same level and you've got goosebumps, right? You're sensing into their system. We do that all the time, but we're not taught to consciously do that. In this work, you consciously stand in it. And I've had people say to me, yeah, right. I love skeptics, by the way. You're right. I'll go stand there and represent so-and-so's father or whatever. And they come out and they go, what happened? And what happened was they got out of this and stood in the field. They stood in somebody else's system consciously. And it's quite something to do.
Wow. Is this similar to epigenetics?
This is directly related to epigenetics because epigenetics talks about those imprints, right? You've got the Great Dutch Hunger Winter, where they've studied an intact population for 4 generations and found that the event that happened there resulted in nutritional problems for all the future generations where mothers had been pregnant with those children. And then you have that again in the Holocaust, and you have that again in 9/11. So we're taking on those thoughts, feelings, and actions. It's, yes, epigenetics, absolutely.
Can you see the patterns from like those eras? Like, can you see a commonality between, I guess the conditioned responses or trauma in people from those time eras?
You can. If you look at something like the Great Depression, I suddenly have a client who shows up now and says to me, I don't understand myself. I'm perfectly fine. I have a really good income. I've got great friends. I have a hoarding problem, and I've got to always make sure that I've got enough. Well, where do you think that came from?
Wow. Wow. I know a lot of people. I might be like that. How do you clear that, right? Like we talked a little bit about that before recording, but what does it look like?
So to clear that, it's more giving everything its place. Once everything has its place and you can see it and it belongs, you no longer need to carry it. The symptom is simply the aggravator that says to you, wake up. Wake up. I'm a pattern in your system and I'm affecting you. Wake up. So what we do is we have a look at the pattern. We have a look at the gift, because there is always a gift. There is never not a gift. So what is the gift it's offering you? What is it trying to tell you that you can do? What is your purpose? So we take it, we look at it, we rest it, we look at the gift, and then we say to you, and now. So an example of that. somebody who came in who thought that she was no good in her family. And this is one of my favorite stories, because they only ever gave her little drops of love. Turns out her family were from the Holocaust and they weren't allowed to show emotions. But what little emotion they could show, they gave to her. And I said to her, what do you like in your family? I'm kind, I'm loving, people love me, my children love me. I said to her, look at what you grew. It's not that you didn't belong. It's they gave you the most precious treasure so you could teach them again how to belong with emotion. They couldn't, you do.
Wow. That's pretty powerful. That's a beautiful story. I know this is a personal question, and I don't know if you can answer this, but like, what were some of the trauma that you were exposing or showing?
Oh, I'll tell you one that's actually quite funny. So money is another one where you inherit DNA. And we get taught things about money. Money is evil. It's either love or money. You can't have both. And I got to here, and we walked out with the clothes on our back, got to the US, we struggled a bit. And I went out one day and I said, okay, God guides, the universe, whatever it is, we need to talk. I need to talk to money. Now I'm waiting to get hit with a piece of 2x4, but nothing happens. And I almost hear a chuckle, I want to say, and I can feel this giggle. So I start talking to money. I say to money, look, this is what I think about you. This is the fear. This is the feelings. And then I suddenly start to realize, wait a minute. I've been in love with money since I was about 3, when I used to collect little canna seeds and give them to mom, because if you planted those, it grew more. And so I had that concept of flow. Well, then I lost it. And we were newly married before we even moved here, newly married. And I thought money didn't love me. It was that simple. It just did not. I was good with it, but it just did not love me. So we go to a casino. And I only know this in retrospect, looking at it, and I'm going, we go to a casino. I've got my mother-in-law's tub here, mine here with just a couple. And I put in 3 and I hit a jackpot. Man, and we could use that money. And suddenly I realized I took it out of hers. Now, my upbringing was, you've got to be impeccably honest. Any impeccably honest idiot would have taken 3 out of this one and put them in there. No. I went to her and said, well, I hit a jackpot, but it was your coins here. And she said, thank you. I realized later, poor money had been trying so hard to be friends with me, and I just was not having it. So I go on this walk, talk to money, come back, and I'm pretty traumatized by the lack of money. Come back, and on my way back on this walk, I pick up a $1 bill, a $5 bill, a $10 bill, a $20 bill, a $50 bill, and a Benjamin. And that was when I realized money is not a commodity. It is a relationship. It is flow. So that for me was one traumatic one. The other one was being told, I guess you don't see it then, but breaking my neck. I broke my neck, went in for surgery. They told my parents I would never walk again. Nobody told me. And this is the power also for me of words and all sorts of things. Came round and my colleagues were crying, and I said to the guy, what's the matter with you? And he said, I just wish you would walk. So I did. Then they freaked, and I'm like, but nobody told me I couldn't. So it was, I think with trauma, one of the things that I recognize more and more is that when you sit in the moment, the trauma and the trigger are genuinely inviting you to make very conscious choices. Very conscious.
So talk more about your back, right? There's a relationship between your belief and actually physically moving with a broken vertebrae, correct? I mean, it is medicine's belief that if you have this certain fracture, you should not be able to move, and you were able to walk. Like, unpack that.
Yeah, and this has happened twice in my family, which is why it's significant. My brother had a stroke when he was 4, And they said he won't go to school. He's going to be paralyzed down the one side. And Mom said, you're not telling him that. We will raise him normally, which is what she told him with me. Don't you tell her anything. And my brother is an accountant who plays squash or racquetball, I think we call it here rather, racquetball, and very active. So we were not raised with as many. I mean, there were still tons of them, but there were some beliefs that we weren't raised with as limiting beliefs. We do so much to ourselves with those. I think I discovered that most when I injured my stomach. I was busy becoming more and more well-known. Took Advil on an empty tummy, didn't know you shouldn't do that because I don't typically drink tablets, and really hurt myself. And came back and people were saying to me, you're in big trouble. You need to get in. They need to do stuff. And I said, just give me 3 weeks. If I can keep seeing myself already teaching, already healthy, I think we're okay. And I went, I think about 7 or 8 weeks after that for endoscopy. And they said to me, you were lucky. Okay.
So visualization and belief.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's telling, it's the visualization, but it's very much what I said to you earlier. When the brain can tell the body, so you've got to be super specific about your language. When the brain can tell the body something it can believe, that becomes the new truth.
Well, how do people, like, I don't want to say trick, right? I don't want to say trick the
It's
brain.
not tricking. Think about it in the opposite direction. How often have you said to yourself, you're so stupid, or why did you do that, you idiot? And what does your body do? It goes, yeah, I am an idiot. Don't ever get into a relationship like that again because you're going to die. And we really believe that. So we avoid those relationships. How often do you have people who say, I'll never have a relationship again, I'm broken? Says who? Said you, and you bought it. Now, if you look at athletes or you look at high achievers, I will guarantee you that every one of those high achievers they do the opposite. You've got two sets of talk. They don't do toilet talk, they do transformational talk. And they are telling themselves that until the body buys it. But you've got to be specific. So what do I mean about that? By that, it's useless for me to say, hey, Trey, I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to be a billionaire. You know what? My brain's going, yeah, and my body's going, mm-hmm. But when I say to you, I'm really going to be financially incredible. And I know in my family, it doesn't always flow well. So I'm going to learn differently. I'm going to become financially literate. I'm changing the way that this family's DNA is expressed through money. And that becomes a calling for me. It becomes a deep peace for me. You are not going to unseat me, and it's going to pull me past all of the old excuses and into the new purpose. And I will get there.
So rewiring the brain and the body.
Totally.
And depending upon your conditioning or your emotional DNA around money, that could be the reason why you're not bringing it forth into your reality.
Yes, and depending on your unconscious loyalty to the ones who came before you. If great-grandfather lost all of his money and said, don't ever invest in a venture because this is what happens, and grandfather goes, don't anybody move around money, it's really risky stuff, and dad goes, for heaven's sake, get a stable job and stay there. Along comes you, and you're an incredible entrepreneur, but every time you want to do it, you're going, can't do that. Can't do that. Until you go, I am busting here. I've got to do this differently. And at that point in time, and you go, and here's how I'm going to do it. And okay, brain, here we go. Now your heart's opened. Your gut, which is your second brain and compass, is switched on. Your creative brain's rocking and rolling, and you are in the zone, and it'll pull you past all of those old reasons not to.
Wow. Yeah. What's the research on this?
That would be some of the epigenetic and the neuroscience stuff. Neuroscience is very clear about it. We used to think, What was the old saying? By the time I'm 7, I'm cooked. No, by the time you're 90, you can still be rewiring what you want. We have great neuroplasticity. I think Norman Deutsch is the one who says, I think he's the one who did the brain that changes itself. Yeah.
Mhm.
Joe Dispenza is really good at this stuff. He talks about this all the time, and about the shifts we're able to orchestrate. And then constellations demonstrate it every day.
Mm. Yeah, money's a big thing, right?
Money is a fabulous thing. It's one of my favorite subjects. It is a wise disciplinarian. It's an incredible mentor. It's a wonderful friend, and it will show up the way you tell it to.
All right, so let's rewire for the listeners right now. Like rewire, you did a little bit of you dived into a little bit of scripts that they can say to themselves about money. Let's dive more into that, right? Like if people that need money, right? Money isn't necessarily bad. It can help you create magnificent things. That could help society. That could help culture. That can help people in need, especially if you want to build educational centers. If you want to
Of course.
build libraries, build schools, depending upon your mission. But some people get stuck, like you said, in the emotional DNA, trauma or passed down limited beliefs and conditions. So what other ways can we rewire the brain around money?
Okay, so the first thing you want to do is sit down and with a piece of paper and say to yourself, okay, what do I think about money? What are my beliefs? And write those all down. Then ask yourself, when did that first start for me? When did I first buy into it that way? What was happening in my life at the time? Then you ask yourself, so if I know my family, who else in the family thinks this way? Did dad have a bump? Did mom have a bump? Are they the ones who gave me my money values or money sentences? Was it from a great uncle, whoever it was? And then ask yourself, is this what I really want? How would I like it to be? So if I believe that only greedy thieves get rich, well, and I hear this from people all the time, I want to get rich. Okay, tell me about your beliefs. Well, they cheat, lie, and steal to get rich. And I go, oh, so you would like to be a cheater, a liar, and a thief? No. Well, if that's your belief, how do you think you're going to get there? So then the next step is to say, so how would you like money to live with you? What would you like to do with money? If you had a whole lot of money and you and money were good friends, what would you do? I would start this foundation, or I would create this career. And my caution always is, be careful. Don't just give it all away. I have an exercise I do where I give people I say to them, are you a giver or a receiver? 90% are givers. So I make them run up and down and give M&Ms one at a time to the people they typically give to. And I say, keep giving them one at a time. And as they're coming back, or walking back, I tell the ones at the other end, eat it, and hold out your hands for more. And eventually they go, I'm not doing this anymore, it's useless. And I go, okay, have you got any? No. Have they got any? No. What if I give you the whole bowl of M&Ms? If I've got a whole bowl, I could eat some, they could eat some, I could grow. Yeah, try doing some of that too. So you want to be a wise steward of money, and you want to really learn to love it. It is fun. It is kind. I have a theory that it goes home in the evenings and sits with God or whoever it is up there and goes, how did I get this gig? I thought you said it was going to be cute. And I've got people tramping on me, squandering me, swearing about me. What? And then the creator says, well, I forgot to tell you, it's when they really see you that the friendship begins.
How many times or how often do you hear people say, I'm not good with money?
Often. And I ask them, really, are you not good with money? Is mom not good with money? Is dad not good with money? How do you know you're not good with money? When did that start for you? What was happening in your life at the time? So, okay, you had one bang and you've decided you're not good with money. Oh no, our family is terrible. Great. So how many more generations in your family are going to be terrible? Or is it time that you started doing something different.
Hmm. So when you heal that, or when you break that pattern, does it break for future generations?
Absolutely, because literally what you're doing right then is you're rewiring your emotional DNA or money DNA or relationship DNA. And now the thoughts, feelings, and actions are no longer the same. So they would take on yours. So I have mothers and fathers who come and they say, I want to do it for my kids. And I go, yeah, not so fast. It begins with you. If you're not doing it, your kids are going to do what you're not doing.
I guess it doesn't work backwards, right?
It does, actually,
Does
in
it?
a very different way. Not necessarily even money, but the emotional DNA does. Because here's what happens. When you suddenly see what's really in your system, your mother, the villain, becomes your mother, the hero sometimes. Things that seemed hopeless suddenly become hopeful. You recognize that a bump is simply a portal to possibility. Everything changes.
Wow, that's so fascinating. Um, but how do we break that identity, right? Like this is all great in theory, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do we break that identity?
Okay, so what you want to do is, whichever identity it is, if we're talking money, what you want to look at is we are conditioned as human beings to belong in our systems. It's how we know we're safe. It's how we know we belong. So what we do is that we flip the language just a little. Hey, Dad, I know you struggled with money. Grandfather, I know you struggled with money. But you guys have really awakened a fire in me to do it differently. Watch me as I learn different ways and I take different steps. Thank you for igniting that in me. Now I'm going to take it in a different direction. So you're thanking, which means you're not out of harmony. You're taking the first steps forward. And sometimes what I will do is I'll have a whole line of them stand one behind the other, all the generations of men or women, and then I'll say to them, take a deep breath in, breathe it out through the generations, and when it gets to your son, push him forward and tell him, do it differently. And often that's the permission we need.
What are often the results, right? Like,
Whew, okay, so many. I will tell you, I've probably worked with people more people than I can count, who've turned themselves into very wealthy individuals from being not well off. People who have health conditions that have resolved. Relationships, yeah, that one resolves really nicely. I see happy people who are open-eyed, open-hearted. They know to go looking in their systems. They know that they are the difference in the world, and that's not just a cliche, it's really true. And then the other thing, of course, is I often ask them, how big are you willing to be? I ask all my clients that, and they go, isn't that a bit egotistical? And I go, mm-mm. The day you agree to be the biggest version of yourself is the humblest day of your life. It is the first day that you agree to truly be responsible for creating the remarkable life you are, and you are now in service of the universe.
I feel like it's not just generational DNA that we fight with that. I think it's like societal
Oh,
beliefs.
very much. But don't forget, it's generational societal beliefs too. So you're talking about meta patterns now, which is, what does religion say? What does culture say? What does my country say? Absolutely. You've got all of that DNA tickling around. And in fact, I was teaching in Montreal and they were saying to me, we are really struggling. We'd like to do this big project, but we keep bumping into stuff. And I said to them, okay, talk to me about the culture of Montreal. And one of them very proudly stood up and said, we are humble. We are made for small bread. And I went, that's why you're not going to get any bigger, isn't it? You've told yourself why you won't get any bigger. Until you change that, you're kind of stuck.
It's like a shared consciousness almost, right?
Very much. We have individual consciousness, we have a systemic consciousness, and then the very, very big consciousness, which includes all and sees all. And yeah. And the other piece that's intriguing, of course, is the minute that you start to observe a different reality or a different pattern into reality, where are you playing?
Do you believe, or I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, that we can change our realities?
You mean it's exactly what I was saying to you is you're playing in the quantum field. The minute you observe a new pattern into reality, nothing is the same. And we're doing it all the time, and we think this is very woo-woo stuff. The only way we innovate is by doing something different. And so, of course, we're changing our reality.
I guess what I get a lot of feedback from is how frustrating it can be for that reality to change, right? Like we want things
Absolutely.
fairly quickly, right?
Well, here's the deal. You can change it pretty quickly, but your body has got to buy what your brain is selling it. And you have all of these sets of thoughts, feelings, and action patterns sitting over here, right? That you've got to overcome. And the way to do that is to make a strong enough case on this side that is more intriguing than this. In other words, I am somebody who comes from a family where we all smoke and drink and eat fatty food all the time. It's how we relate. We're beautiful people. And I look at it and I go, you know what? I have got to get fit. I can't do this. But it's so much nicer to just relax with the family and do that stuff. So you've got this push-pull going on. And you will know this. You know this yourself. You want to do something. And what happens the minute you take a step? Up come all the little voices, right? Da, 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 da. Now, everybody thinks those are my inner voices. No, they're not. Those are your multi-generational voices. And they're all having a quiet chat. But it's when you go, I am so intrigued by that. I have got to go and do that. That the voices go, well, that's louder than we are. What the heck?
Well, I mean, a lot change is hard for some, right? Or a lot. And some people have responsibilities, right? Like if they want to, like right now, you're seeing a lot of people leaving their jobs because they're unhappy. But there's a lot of fear associated with that because people have responsibilities.
Of course. Of course.
Those voices could be small children's voices that they have to take care of. And so there's this doubt of, if I go to this occupation, or if I leave this job and go to pursue this, I'm not 100% sure that I'll be able to maintain the life that we're used to.
Great. And yes, I have people come at me with that all the time. I am certainly not saying, dump that, move to that. What I am saying is, if you're really, really intrigued by that, start building the pathway. And here's how it is, which is going to make it a lot easier on your listeners. One new thought, one new feeling, one new action at a time. Don't eat the whole elephant. You're going to have such mental indigestion. One at a time. It's literally, I mean, it always sounds crazy because you hear this, but when you do that one step, you're doing a couple of things. You're building the winner effect, which is, I did it. Wow. Okay. Another step. I did it. Renegotiate that step. I did that. Okay. You're building that inner library. And before you know it, you've taken more steps than you realize, and you can move from that frustrating job into the one you really love. Or you could do what I do or did, get boxed in a corner where you have no plan B. And I promise you, you're going to figure it out very fast.
So burn the bridge, huh? Or burn the boats.
I would not recommend it. It is brutal, but it's going to teach you very quickly that you can either sink or swim. And I will tell you, there were many nights in a bathtub where I thought, I'm going down the plug hole with this thing. What do I do? What you've got to remember is everything that you need, you have. Everything you need, you have. The thoughts you need, the feelings you need, the actions you take, they come from there, they come from within. You've got those, and you will build your way to the place you want, but you've got to fully invest in it.
Let's say I'm fully invested, right? But my reality is not aligning with the vision that I have. So do I disconnect from that reality and try to envision me doing the task and feeling those emotions? Because that will only last for so long. That's not really sustainable, right? Because I'm still in that reality.
Here's what I would say to you with the reality. Ask yourself about that reality. What are the real bummers about that reality? What's got you stuck? What do you tell yourself about that? What do you feel? What do you think? What are you doing? What is the reality you desire? What does that look like? What do you tell yourself when you're there? In fact, I will often say to people, I do a thing called a structural constellation. So here's where you are now. There's where you want to be. One step at a time, we're going to plot it so you can feel it. So we get to a step and they go, oh, yeah, right, but I can't just dump all the money and go running over there. Okay, so we know we need X amount of money. Yeah, but I don't know if that'll be enough. And out come the money sentences. And I said to them, who does that belong to? Okay, so I know I need X amount of money, so I've got to move towards that. What else do you need? So we plot the steps until they can stand on that thing they desire. Okay, tell me what that feels like. Whoa. Okay, now what I want you to do is remember that. When you can feel that, when you can feel that tickle and you can hear those thoughts and your stomach's really settling, you're taking the right steps. Use that as your compass to get you from here to there. Reality is not just reality. It is really an amalgamation of what you're telling yourself and making it mean. It is not just the cold light of day.
How long do you have to hold that emotion or that feeling?
Until you get there.
So it could be years.
It could be if you really, really have unconscious loyalties and all sorts of what I call butt syndrome reasons for staying there, you could take a lifetime. By like token, you could begin taking those steps. And bear in mind this, I had somebody who did a piece of work for me and they said, I'm really worried I won't complete this piece of work. I'm really worried. So we start doing the piece of work and they get about halfway and they go, I can't anymore. So we stop. So they look at me and say, see, I told you I was going to fail. And I went, stop. Have you ever been this far before? No. Are you there now? Yeah. Is this a reality for you now? Yes. Then how did you fail? You may have a new base start, but how did you fail? We've got to be so careful to not tell ourselves you failed. You didn't get the $2 billion. Darn, you're an idiot. You only managed 5 million. Really? It's moving the needle all the time. And Trey, by the way, it is not hard work. It's a darn good adventure. The alternative is to sit and be really miserable and go, well, it sounds nice, but I can't do it. Okay. Or you could.
Wow. Where can people find you? How can they connect? How can they find your work?
Judy Wilkins-Smith.com. They can find me through my book, with the newly released one, which is available at Barnes and Nobles and all of those, Amazon, all of those good bookstores. They can find my constellations meditations on the website.
Judy, this has been amazing. I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Like, I really feel like you're doing great work, and I'm just so happy that you came on to share this with my audience.
Trey, it's not only been a pleasure, it's just been a fun time to have. And thank you for having me on and asking such great questions.